Hello, and welcome to the Waves webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about pop rock mixing techniques with Guy Sigsworth. Before we get started, I'm going to take a minute and go through the format of the webinar for anybody that hasn't done one of these before. My name is Yoni and I'm the moderator. You can't see me, but I'm here working behind the scenes to help make sure everything runs smoothly. The webinar will last about 45 minutes to an hour and has two parts to it. First half will be a short presentation from Guy, where he'll show you his approach to mixing pop rock music, while going over some of his favorite Waves plugins and how he uses them in a session. Keep in mind that the Adobe webinar system is not the ideal setup for listening to audio, so to really hear how any of our tools sound in action, you should download the demos from our website, waves.com, and try them out on your own source material that you know best. The second half of the webinar will be an open Q&A. Feel free to submit any questions you have, and based on how much time there is, we'll try and answer as many of them as we can get to. You can send your questions in at any time, but you won't see them right away in the chat, as they'll first go to me, and then I'll feed them to Guy one at a time. And on that note, let me hand things over now to our presenter for today. His background ranges from classical to super modern, and he's worked with some of the biggest artists in music, such as Bjork, Madonna, and Seal, to name just a few. We're real excited he could take time out of his busy schedule to be with us here today, so please welcome Guy Sigsworth.
Hi there, I'm Guy. I'm hoping that you already know something of my work or you've heard some of my records. Yeah, I have been very fortunate to work with some incredible artists, particularly amazing singers. Let's think about how we approach things. I've always thought of my DAW like it's a musical instrument, because I think we're all musicians. Whether you think of yourself as an engineer or a mixer, you're a musician. And when I bought my first Pro Tools system, I think it was back in 1998, I thought of it as like a giant modular synthesizer in which the EQs and the compressors, they were like filters, envelopes of this huge synthesizer. And I think that helped me get creative with it. If you're just starting out, which many of you are, we've all got to start somewhere, I'd say don't be ashamed of presets. We get very snobbish about them, that you should always roll your own. But I see them as like crowdsourced knowledge that you can... They're suggestions from somebody else, that's what they are. So if you're really not sure what to do with an EQ or a compressor and you're not sure what your snare drum should sound like, there's no harm in trying a preset. You can always reject what it offers. And sometimes you can pick one at random to surprise yourself. Obviously you should grow out of presets, but they're a great place to start. I'd also say always think of clever ways to misuse your plugins. I've lately been trying a little trick with the Waves denoising X-Noise thing, where I deliberately show it a totally unrelated sound and tell it it's a noise in the first sound, and then it's trying to extract this completely unrelated sound from the sound that it thinks has got noise in it, and it creates all kind of bizarre spectral artifacts. Now, you can waste a lot of hours with those kind of experiments, but if you don't do a bit of that, you won't develop your own unique approach. So I do a lot of that. We've got a tune today that we're going to show you. You must appreciate that most of the stuff that I'm done in my career for copyright reasons, I can't share it with you. So I've got a demo of a song I've been working on with somebody that's cool for me to show you. So we'll play you a little bit of it. We'll play you up to the end of the first chorus, and then maybe I can show you through various things on it and how I've approached it. Bear in mind, it is just a demo.
Okay.
Way to turn. You call me a liar. Can't you see my heart is about to burn? And you got the power, so please stop acting like you just wanna give up. Boy, your words are so tough. Why you acting like you got nothing to lose? I gave you my heart, gave it to you.
Cool. Right, there's loads of that in that we could talk about. It's always worth looking at the vocal first, I think. So here we've got the vocal, which, as you can see, has been fairly well edited and retimed. One little trick I'm quite fond of doing is de-essing the sound, because if you see it de-essed like this, you can make sure that your effects, when they don't catch the sibilants, they just keep a kind of smoothness. Some people just do it by putting a de-esser on the send, but I quite like doing it manually, because then you can turn up the high frequency on your reverbs and delays, and you still keep the clarity of diction, and people can hear every word that the singer's saying. So if you look at how we've got this routed, we're doing a bit of EQing there with the REQ. Nothing too radical. And yeah, compression. It's all kind of standard stuff, I guess. Maybe we could just show a little bit of that as it's sounding.
I'm caught in the fire, and I don't know which way to turn. You call me a liar, but can't you see my heart is about to burn up, and you got the power, so please stop.
Yeah, you get the idea. I think because this is still a demo, we haven't kind of gone as nuts as we normally would. But Chris has got a shot photo just from what a standard vocal track would look like on one of our mixes. You can see that we're much more intense normally about what we do with it. Generally, you should put as much of your love into the vocal channel as you do into anything else, because 99% of the way that most human beings respond to a piece of music with vocals in is dependent on how the vocal sounds. So effort put into the vocal is always worthwhile, I'd say. Excellent. So if we're moving on beyond that, there's some interesting other stuff. Okay, one thing that might be interesting, if we look at one of the synth pads, it's interesting to show what it was like before it got dressed up for dinner, because I'm very, very fond of, in SuperTap, that you can clock the modulation. And if you create detuning delays using the clocked modulation in SuperTap, you get that kind of spread that synths need, but there's that kind of pulsing quality which gives it a kind of modern edge. So can we have the kind of butt naked version of it,
Yeah.
Chris? Right, it's pretty kind of bare like that. And if we put in what we've done here, of course we couldn't resist doing some automation as always. But you'll hear how, because the delays have got a detune which is clocked, you just get this wonderful kind of pulsing on the
Shall I
effect.
turn it on and off?
Yeah. Yeah. And you also get that little bit of turbulence from it. And I think it gives us the kind of richness of those 80 synths, but in a more modern, controlled kind of way, and I like it for that. Also notice that I'm using the S1 imager. I love the imager, I just can't get enough of it, because I always want things to have that kind of out of the loudspeakers sound. Beyond 3D is my ideal, and we've been a bit sneaky, and we've actually automated it, so if you can see it sort of gets wider progressively and then dips back in. Want to show them, Chris? Generally, I'm a sucker for automation. It's like any parameter at all I want to automate. This is kind of one reason why I almost can't go back to conventional mixing desks, because they're just too little control in them. Absolutely love that. Excellent. Maybe we can look at some of the tricks we've been doing on the drums. Like for instance, if we look at the snare drum, we've sent it into a reverb. I think we're using, which waveform is it? The R-verb, yeah. And then we're deliberately creating like a kind of, again, a modern take on an 80s drum sound, where we're deliberately cutting off the return very abruptly in the verses, and then we make it slightly longer in the choruses. So if you want to demonstrate, Chris. It gives you that momentary exaggerated sound on the snare, and then it gets out of the way. So it's kind of compact but huge. And then the chorus, it gets. And I guess I don't know if it's the same thing that people like Justice do, but it kind of makes me think of them. I'm a huge fan of their music. Well, I was kind of using that trick long before then. Excellent, that's cool. And then I think what we're using on, is it the Hack, Chris? Have we got some interesting stuff there? Were you using the sound, the transient designer?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. I love this particular plugin, Transex. It's pretty soggy without it, and then it just brings the front. It's just more crisp, isn't it? More al dente. And bear in mind, actually, with that plugin, that you don't only use it to make things more snappy or more aggressive. You can actually do the opposite. You can soften things when they're too hard. It has actually saved me a couple of times where things are actually just too fiercely transient. Sometimes acoustic guitars get like that. They're actually just too strummy, too harsh for the track, and you can use the Transex to soften them. So that's very cool. What else have we got going on there, Mr. Elves, that we can have a look at here?
Strings are pretty cool.
Yeah, let's see what we're doing with the strings. Yeah, I think because they are ultimately strings out of a box from a certain well-known maker of such products, we've used a lot of the more retro styling things to just give them a bit more feel, so they're not so sort of painfully clean. And I find that the V series is really, really good for that. It's excellent. Now maybe we can show you a couple of more geeky things we got up to, because we can't resist playing. Like there's a sound at the beginning. And actually how we started was, we literally started with white noise. The start sound was literally...
Let me turn it down.
Okay, it's just...
Sorry.
It was literally white noise. Then we... it's that. And what we did was we took the Q10. I think Q10 was the first Waves plugin I fell in love with. It's just got really extreme notch filtering. And there's an old trick I developed where basically I notch out frequencies from white noise until it becomes harmonic. So, you take out all the C's, all the D's, whatever, and then whatever you're left with, suddenly the white noise seems to have something harmonic in it.
Yeah.
If you can see how we're approaching it. I know this seems like something that you only do if you've got a lot of free time, but it's the sort of thing I love. It's just, I am a geek, and it's in my nature to try stuff like this.
Shall I jump to the after?
Yeah. So that was the before. Here's the after.
So this is unfiltered.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you hear how that hiss has suddenly got like notes in? Because we took basically this song is in F sharp, and we took all the notes that aren't in F sharp out of it, and then it suddenly sort of resonates in the scale of F sharp. So then we've put some EQs to control it, so that progressively across the 4 bars of the intro it can get brighter. Strangely beautiful, isn't it? And resting. And again, automating some stereo action.
Just a limiter.
And a limiter, because we've pulled so much out of it, we need to hold this volume. And then when we put the automation on, we're doing a sort of pulsing. And that could be great for one of those kind of dance build-ups, that kind of trick. So you can see how, again, it's that attitude of approaching your DAW like it's a synthesizer, and like you're just building up sounds like you would in a huge modular synth, rather than just thinking of something you stick your audio files on the screen and kind of hope to match them up. So that's really, really cool. And any other things? I'd say actually the Q10 saved my life a couple of times, because it's just that it's so tight in its notch capacity, and it doesn't really glitch when it does it. I was once producing a song for a Brazilian artist, Bebel Gilberto, and she had this demo recording of her and her friends sort of playing along quite drunkenly in a hotel room, and she really wanted me to use it and yet there were times occasionally when somebody would play like a really bad wrong note, and I wasn't supposed to edit it, so I cleverly notched out the offending notes from whichever guitarist had played the wrong note, and then you still heard their performances, but you didn't hear that clash where suddenly one guy's playing a G while the other's playing a G sharp. So they're great for that. Generally, other plugins I particularly love. I love Mondo Mod. I'd recommend you get into that one, because if you use delays on that, you can get this kind of smearing, detuning effect that always makes me think of stuff like My Bloody Valentine, which I'm a huge fan of. As you heard on the snare drum, I really like Arva for the non-linear settings. Generally like reverbs that aren't just recreations of normal spaces, even though there are some great ones of that. And so the non-linear settings always sort of get me going a bit. Also, both Max Bass and R Bass are very, very handy in your toolkit. I've used both a lot, actually. When I think about it, when I was doing Let Go with Frou Frou about 10 years ago, the whole bass sound on that song was heavily processed through Max Bass, because it has this dinky little preset called PC Laptop to try and make your bass sound like it's going to sound good on really weedy speakers. And I thought, oh, I like that, and so I sort of crossed that with a more subby one. So generally, thumbs up to those two. They'll get you out of many troublesome areas. Also recently, Waves have brought out their recreation of the Aphex All Exciter, and there's something about that that's really, really special. I don't know if we've used it on this mix.
Yeah.
It can just add energy, harmonic energy, in just that right kind of way. You kind of have to ration yourself, because most things sound better with it on, and if you put it on too many tracks, you'll go blind. It'll kind of...
So we're using it on the middle 8 strings.
Yeah, let's hear it then. It's great. Why don't you play the whole section so people can get context? Yeah, love that. Any other ones I'm sort of really, really, really into? Yeah, I think that covers a lot of stuff that's worth talking about for now, isn't it? What do you think? Maybe we should move on to some questions, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. To use a control of your automation, so what is it? No. Dots on screen. Trackball dots on screen. I think we've often debated if there would be one. And we had this idea of Wacom tablet or something. It's just once you get into the habit of it and you know how you're going to cut and paste them, it's just as quick, I find, to sort of draw them on the screen.
Yeah.
I might be up for it, but I'll tell you what's fun, actually. When I was working with Andrew Page on the Alanis Morissette album, there was a ridiculous amount of automation drawn on manually. And one time we plugged it into an Icon desk. And it was just hilarious, because all the faders on the Icon desk were like scuttering across from all this mad automation. No, generally it's just screen art, which I love. Okay.
Regarding the reverb on the snare, why alternate a return, not use a gate with a sidechain?
Actually, I think that's a fair enough question. I mean, I quite like sometimes when the cutoff is really abrupt, and it's very hard to get that normally with a reverb just by, say, pulling down its time. I mean, in theory, I could print the reverb and just edit the audio file, but I love that real karate chop death to the sound kind of thing. And also, when you start doing it with automation, you can kind of choose to do tricks like that, where you sort of manually open it up in a different section of the song, or one hit going into the chorus, you do something different with it. So I like the idea that it's kind of running live, and the automation means we can shift things around when we suddenly think of a good idea. Manual de-essing. How do we do that manual de-essing?
Should I?
Yeah, we could just pick a bit of vocal and just show it how you do it. Once you get used to reading waveforms, it's pretty obvious where a sibilant is. They all look different. I mean, you could do it without listening to it. The human voice is that predictable, I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
So you can kind of spot where it's an S. And you just grab it and down it goes. It's like that, and you've got it.
Done.
Pretty easy. I would say that I tend to EQ before I compress, because that way the compressor gets a clearer signal to work on. Because typically, I mean, one of the most common things you do is to remove bass end from a track, and if you do that before it hits the compressor is going to read the signal smoother. You know, typically, I mean, in an extreme case, you have a singer who might even hit the floor or do all kinds of stuff in the low end.
Yeah.
If you're cutting that, it's better that the compressor reads the signal after the cutting, not before it, because you're going to get a smoother result. What are we up to? Do I have to scroll down here?
Oh, yeah.
Ah! What's happening? Sorry. Bring it back. Bring it back. What's the next question?
So, do you have a favourite mix bus compressor or limiter? We normally use that guy.
Yeah, but we've used lots of things. So I mean, I think we actually that one's that's a pretty typical signal chain, I'd say.
Yeah.
I think actually that what's probably changed over time is just that we do take things further before mastering, don't we? Because everybody else does. How much headroom do I leave for mastering?
Normally, if we were sending something off to the mastering, we'd just leave the limiter off the end,
Yeah.
and just turn the you can see the makeup on the bus compressor we've got going on here is quite a bit of gain. Just turn that down, probably to leaving so it's sort of peaking around -6 really. I mean that leaves them plenty of room to do whatever they need to do.
Yeah. In general, I'd say that if you've put stuff on the master bus earlier and then you've made musical decisions around it, you're very wary of taking too much of it off. And what I often do, if somebody else is mastering the record, is give them, you know, my idea, my mastered version and my unmastered, and say, do something that's like this but better.
Do you mix in the box? Mastering out to a console.
I think proudly mixing the box. I don't feel any need for a console anymore, and kind of I'm kind of glad really, because I tend to think of those huge mixing desks as just a waste of real estate. They just become huge coffee tables. But I know I'm on the extreme end of things that way. Clear kick-bass relationship in a mix. I would say there's various things you might do. It depends what kind of a bass sound and what kind of a kick sound you're going for. But in general, if the kick's got lots of attack, you might be dipping the bass at the front or something like that to get it through. Yeah, I mean, I've done things where I've even automated stuff to do that. You slightly pull down the bass at the moment of impact of the kick, so that if there's a fight, the kick gets there first, you know.
Making sure that everything's in time helps a lot as well.
Yeah, being in
Making sure
time.
that the tracks are exactly at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sometimes you want kick and bass to actually sound like one sound. There are hip-hop tracks where they literally feel like they're a single noise. What audio interface and speakers do you use for in-the-box mixes? Well, I'm a huge fan of the Dynaudio Air 6s. Using them for some time. They work for me because I'm just very familiar with them. So normally when I hear things out of the room, they don't surprise me. They're friendly enough to work for long periods, but they're not flattering. Flattery isn't really isn't really good for you. in the studio. You want the truth, not a rosy version of it. Do I find myself replacing drum sounds in songs that are sent to me to mix? I don't do a lot where I'm not involved right from the start. One reason is actually precisely that if you're involved from the start, you tend to know what sounds the artists are most passionate about.
Yeah.
So you don't immediately bin things that they love or fail to bin things that they hated but just used as demo sounds. So I generally don't do too much of that stuff where I'm just given the track at the end. There's a track recently I've been sent that I'm very much thinking of doing that. But then I think people who know my work expect me to just be myself with it. This is a really good question, actually. Do you still feel the demoing songs is as valuable now as it was years ago? Do your demos sort of morph into the final versions since everything lives in the DAW? Yeah, I'd say that actually the old categories have completely broken down. And, you know, in the old days of studio life, you knew whether you were in a writing session, a mixing, a tracking, everything. Now you can be at mixing and the singer can walk through the door and say, you know what, I think I want to change the lyrics in the middle 8, and they can just go in the booth and sing it, and you can do it. And I think all of those things have become fluid. And yes, demos go straight on to being final recordings. There's no reason to replace anything unless you just didn't like it. It's not something where there's a demo and there's no choice but to start again. Techniques to create depth for your rock drums, particularly the snare and your big mixes. I don't know that I've got a particular technique. I think with things that are more rocky, you just tend to have a sound picture in your head, I think, don't you? It's probably from all those gigs of you know, where the drummer is in relation to the rest of the band. I suppose most people's perception of a drummer in a rock track as opposed to a hip hop track is that he's kind of bigger but sort of further back, isn't he? I mean, that's how you imagine a rock drummer, because hip hop sometimes, you know, that clack of the side stick can feel like it's 1 inch from your nose, but you wouldn't make a rock snare drum sound like that. So I think a lot of it's about the perspective, isn't it? Do I ever find an extremely automation intensive session that the timing of the automation lags a bit? It's not as precise. I would say that's one reason why I use Pro Tools. I think Pro Tools automation doesn't let me down, mostly. Very occasionally gives me trouble. But no, whereas I'd have to say, you know, certain other brands, the automation is quite up to doing that kind of intense stuff all the time.
I think as long as the delay compensation's in the green, and as long as your degree of thinning in the preferences is set to none, like ours is here, then you should be good.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. Do you track with hardware EQ and compression? Yeah, I think for vocals, I'm a huge fan of that little silver box.
Avalon.
The Avalon, which
preamp.
Avalon preamp. I think it's really nice on vocals. I kind of gradually discovered over the years that you need different things for different contexts, and what's great for a voice is not great for an acoustic guitar. So for acoustic guitar, actually we've recently gone over to, what's that thing on the API? I got one of those API lunch boxes.
Shiny box.
The shiny box, yes, and I like that one. It seems to have just a great great quality for the transients on guitars and stuff. Do I use any outboard gear to mix?
No.
Basically,
Speakers.
loudspeakers. Actually, there are certain things I like distressors. I think they're pretty amazing, and I think if I had some money, I'd love to get like an Eventide H1000 or something like that. There's a few bits of gear, but not a lot actually for the actual in the box mixing. I guess the thing is that you get used to a kind of level of precision where you almost don't want the outboard stuff colouring it, because you haven't allowed for it in the way you've structured the music. Outboard summing. I've read up people sort of debating this on Gearsluts and stuff, and maybe I'm just not fully understanding it, but never bothered me about it really. But I know some people are passionate about it, and some people make great records like that. I don't think I've got a philosophy on that, but I think what inevitably happens is if you do put it on, everything else will fall into place around that, and you'll never be able to take it off, you know. So if you do go that route, and it's fine if you do, you know, yeah, it's probably fatal to take it off again, because then you'll have made all these musical decisions early on in the process based on how they were reacting to that master bus limiter. Do some of the artists that I work with bring in their own Pro Tools sessions? Yeah, I'd say actually the tech savviness of the average songwriter has just got higher and higher, and quite a few people are very, very tech savvy, and they bring in all kinds of things. People are different. There are some people who, you know, they just sung the song into their phone before, you know, and then there are people who, you know, come up with stuff that challenges me to keep up with it. So yeah, generally, I think if you are an artist in this day and age, you need to get your chops together on something, whether it's Pro Tools, Logic, or FL Studio, whatever it is. Favorite tricks for dirtying up painfully clean sample sounds? Yeah. I think actually that's an interesting question. I think one of the hardest things to get right, which I think the Waves V series are doing a good job, is what you might call soft distortion. Hard distortion, you know, anything from digital clipping to, you know, Marshall Stack on 11. People figured out, I think, quite early how to get that kind of thing right. It's the kind of soft level where you're just doing it that little bit that's been the hardest to get right, and that's so often part of the quality of the sound of things we love. Actually, some years ago, I was in India recording a record with an Indian string orchestra, and the classic Bollywood string sound is actually caused by the engineer deliberately riding up the gain on the desk to distort them through the desk, and that just gives it the strings just that extra cut. So I'm always looking for things, and I'd probably say that we use lots of different things in small amounts, rather than necessarily use one solution to just get that slight bit of extra harmonic intensity from sounds. What is the most efficient way to capture a really good and decent vocal track? Well, you know, it's performance first, sound quality second. I would rather a badly recorded, if not hopelessly recorded, great vocal with great vibe and feel over a brilliantly recorded one where the performance was just like a read-through. So, and in fact, if the signal isn't just terrible and there's a great performance in there, I've got the patience to try everything to render that. You know, Chris and me were mixing a track that an unsigned artist had sung on a really terrible mic the other day, and we got around it. We just worked harder. So performance is the main thing, and actually that partly is about the psychology of the artist and also your relationship with them. Some artists are very delicate people, and you have to be very careful how you treat them. Other people, if you've got a really great relationship with them, you can almost be rude to them and they can take it. You know, so I think it's more about the human skills than about you know, what kind of compressor you use. Do I use parallel distortion? Yeah, actually I do. Parallel distortion is very useful on all kinds of things because I've had parallel distorted strings before, and sometimes ride them up, because you might have a thing where the strings sound great when they start the song off on their own, and then by the time there's a busy track going on, they're just losing definition, and it's not just a matter of making them louder or even EQing them. They just need more sonic energy to cut through the sort of layers of sound. So parallel distortion is a great thing. Do I have a particular plugin I use for it? I use anything. Do I still use hardware synths? Have I moved completely to virtual synths? I have a couple of things I quite like, but I kind of enjoy the software side of things really. I still have a Clavion Nord, I guess, and I've got one of those Korg ones with a vocoder thing stuck in it, just for a laugh really. How much time do I usually spend on a mix? A lot, I think. I think we just try and get it right. I think you do whatever you think it takes, and most of them take a lot of loving care, I guess. And in fact, I think it's interesting. For instance, there are songs where you're comping vocals together out of loads of performances to get that sort of best performance you can, almost word by word. And then there are other ones where there is a vocal, there are no other takes, you have to work it. And sometimes you almost put just as much hours into the single track one because you ride it even more carefully, you know, just to make sure that the audience hears everything of it you want them to hear. Panning scheme for stacked up vocals. Do I have a panning scheme for stacked up vocals? I'd say that I'm into, I like the magic number 3. I know a lot of people like 4 for a lot of things, but there's something about 3 because you've got one in the middle, one on the left, and one on the right. And then if you need them to be louder, you can pull the left and the right ones in a little bit. So there's 3 on this. Maybe because 4, everything starts to just get a little bit too sort of mulchy for my ears, but I don't know if my taste is typical in this, but I like 3. As you can see on this session, the trackers are panned hard left and right, but sometimes you move them in a bit if you just want more definition. If you had a choice of only one mic for vocals, what would you choose? Well, I really like my Sony C800G. I use that a lot. It has a lot of energy, a lot of clarity of diction. But I also love, you know, U47s. Love loads of stuff. I have even, you know, they made records, really popular records with SM58s. Björk's vocals on Unravel are SM58, and they were just such great performances. You didn't mind about the mic. Do lots of compression on drums? Yeah, I think so. I think we're almost so used to that now that it's almost hard to imagine not doing it. There's parallel compression, there's bus compression, there's compressing the compression of the compressor. Yeah. Is there an order in which you like to mix? Drums first, then vocals, guitars, synths, etc.? Yeah, that's an interesting question because when I started going into studios, I saw engineers always start, you know, from the kick drum, and they'd work on that kick drum for 15 minutes, and then they'd work their way up to a snare drum, and I thought, oh, that's how people have to make records. And then when I was working with Mark Stent on Björk's song Unravel that I'd done with her, I learned a salutary lesson. He put up the faders, more or less at unity, and then immediately started riding the vocal and said, I'll just get the vocal sounding wonderful, and I'll just go back and fix everything else. And it made me realise that that's not a bad way to go. And I have done songs where the drums have changed drastically in the late stages of the song, or even haven't arrived until the last stages of the song. So I think one of the joys of the modern way of making records is there's no order you have to do things in. And sometimes as well, actually, when you're preparing a backing track to get a singer excited, you might even sort of push certain things too far just to make them feel vibey, and then you know that once you've got to make them come out, you're going to pull more frequencies out of stuff. But generally, I'd say whatever the song needs. I'd say that when we do vocals, depending on the artist, of course, but yeah, it's going through a tube pre, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get a little bit of that colouring. We don't really use the compression that much, do we?
Normally, just to get them vibing in a room, just use the Waves R EQ and the Waves R comp for us. Just on TDM mode, just so they're just sort of holding above the track quite easily.
Yeah, I think that we don't really use hardware compression on the vocals. I mean, no. if you occasionally, if we've got a singer who's just going crazy with the levels, and you can't even manually ride it to follow them, then I suppose you might wind up using the hardware compressor, just as a sort of session saver. But most of the singers I work with, know if they're going to suddenly scream, they take a step back and all that kind of stuff. So it's not really a problem. What do I add most of the effects on vocals via aux sends or inserts? What is your typical chain for a huge vocal? I think I always assume that I'm going to have at least a delay and a reverb on a vocal. Sometimes you might even have a delay going into a reverb to make it not so echo. And sometimes you have extra things to catch the ends of phrases and a long word and stuff like that. So you might have a short delay, just putting a bit of sound around the thing, and a long delay for the more excited moments. Even actually, you might even run some kind of low-level distortion for an excited moment to actually consciously make the singer almost sound like they're going beyond what the mic can handle. Because sometimes if you do that at the right moment, it adds a sort of dramatic excitement. And if you've got it in plug-in form, where if you go too far, you can pull it back again. But I have written that up in an excited moment on the vocal. Cool tricks for using delays synced to musical divisions. Yeah, I'm always up for it. I'm always trying every kind of thing with a delay. I kind of think delay is probably the single most useful effect. In extremis, if you had to make a mix with either only a delay or only a reverb, I'd choose only a delay, I think, because it's just much more versatile with what you could do with it. Yeah, I think what's kind of interesting, sometimes if you run delays at very fast clock speeds and automate them to go into feedback and then cut the feedback off, then you can create kind of stammer effects. Actually, we really like the H delay for that, because it models the characteristic of an old-fashioned kind of Lee Perry type of delay going into feedback and overload in a really nice way. And we have used that artistically to just ramp it up to 100 and then pull it back down again. Have I tried the Waves Vocal Rider plugin? What's your thoughts on plugin assisting with vocal automation? I'm very up for it. I think we gave it a run and quite liked it. Then inevitably, because we're such geeks, we had to sort of vet everything it had done. It is a time saver if you're under pressure, because sometimes it's easier to edit automation that you've already got going if there's an odd word where you don't like what it's done, than to just put automation in on a blank screen. So there's something about if it's already done a run, and it's at least put a lot of edit points in the automation, then it's much easier to find the word where you don't agree with how it's written it up or down and then pull it up and down. So yeah, it can be a time saver for that. On the beginning of Alana's Citizen of the Planet, were you doing a pumping effect on the synths and tablets to get the groove? It sounds like it's subliminally moving up and down. Lots of automation, yeah, lots of volume riding. I don't actually do a lot of it using sidechain compression. I've kind of been influenced by the records that do that, but it tends to be just lines drawn on screens. And I must thank Andy Page, who engineered that, for making it sound so fantastic. Any more tricks like that, like creating things from white noise and stuff like that? Any more favourite effects? Yeah, I'm always up for effects that you're always looking for this effect you think nobody else has got. Of course, this thing, if I have got them and nobody else has got them, then I shouldn't really be telling you all about them, because then you're all going to have them too. I just bought over the weekend the new GRM tools from the French guys, who Pierre Chauffeur came from, because they've obviously got some weird stuff. And I love a lot of that stuff. A lot of the really coolest effects are stuff you have to do offline and then re-edit back into the song, stuff like Metasynth and stuff like that. And it's worth getting familiar with those, finding things that you like that. I even really love SoundHack and all those kind of things. But again, they're mostly offline things that you do process, on your laptop and then drag it onto the big screen. Have I used Drumagog? I don't know that product, unfortunately, so I can't say whether it's good or bad. I use Addictive Drums a lot, which I really like. I've also used BFD a bit. I think you've got to use whatever you've got, and whatever you've got, you can work it really well, because there are times when I've been fooled, where I've assumed that something's really a live drum and it's been really well programmed, or something where it was actually a live drum and it was so sort of badly edited it sounded like a machine. So use what you've got, and learn the tricks of celebrating what it's good at and hiding what it's not good at. You have shown using all the Waves core plugins like REQ, RComp. Do you use any of the classic model effects? Pugtech SSL 4000. Yeah, I actually like the Pugtech quite a lot. I think those are really good. Because I kind of like those Pultec EQs, because particularly the mid-range ones. Is that called MEQ, the one that's kind of based on the old green one? Yeah, because that's really useful for particularly. There's a certain kind of mid-range that most instruments, if you can easily fight a vocal, and you can sort of pull out the offending frequency if you know where it on that. And it's a very broad way, so it doesn't kind of doesn't sound EQ'd. That's the one, isn't it? Yeah. It's even got the main time if you want it.
Yeah.
That might be taking recreation too far, but I salute the determination.
Good effort.
Yeah. With limitless options for arrangement and layering in the DAW, do you ever find yourself concerned about losing the creative energy of the original performance? Just wondering if you ever find yourself tracking out or stripping things down to get back creative immediacy. Yeah, I guess you have to be honest to yourself about, am I putting too much stuff in? Is the stuff I'm putting in what I want to put in? Because there is that thing that sometimes each new sound is just getting in the way of an old sound, so it's not really helping. So yeah, I think you should be doing that. Actually, even with the DAW, sometimes just being a bit ruthless about your plugin list and not putting in things in the list if they're just a distraction. If you never use them, I've got sort of Hammond organ emulations or something, and I thought I never really use Leslie speakers, but just reading down the plugin list when you're looking for something, I thought it just slows down the creative process. Let's just take that option off the table, Is there a point when you can layer too many tracks? Is there a point when you need to limit yourself? Yes, I think that's probably true. Unfortunately, I'm probably guilty of I'm a maximalist. I'm always wanting to squeeze as much into the song as I possibly can. And I have great admiration for people who can make it work with, 3 noises, 3 drum noises and 1 synth and a bass line or something. I really admire people who know how to do that. I think there's some inner me that just always wants to be Mahler writing symphonies of 1,000 and stuff, Do you find yourself doing most of your drum programming from the ground up, or do you use loop libraries, or a mixture of both loops and programming? Again, initially I was a little bit sort of nervous of the kind of loop library approach, and recently I've been working with a really good American dubstep producer, Starkey, and he has this really creative, immediate way of using them. And I discovered, of course, that they're actually really fun when you particularly use loops that were designed to work at a very different tempo to the tempo you try and put them at. So, a drum and bass loop being played at very slow tempo, when you start getting the artifacts in the loop, can be really creative. So there's always chances for doing that. I'm quite into looking for the kind of quirk in programming of the thing that, if you're programming it, the thing that you think, well, no, a drummer would never think of doing that. A lot of hip-hop programming and electronic programming it's no longer imitating the hand and feet movements of a drummer. It's doing something different. So don't be frightened of doing something a little bit quirky and almost almost wrong sounding, because that might be where the originality is. Do plugins work only on the mixing stage, or it can work as a preamp sound? We're using them from the get-go, aren't we, really? You know, sometimes when you're creating a guitar part, you know, you'll have the guitar plugin running from the start, because that's when you kind of know that you like the sound, I guess. So, yeah, they're not something that you only switch on at the mixing stage. Again, as I think these roles are really breaking down. I think this idea that there is tracking, there is mixing, there is writing. It's all one fluid process, and you can switch between one role and another in an instant. Especially if the artist suddenly, you know, doesn't like their second verse or something, then you do whatever it takes to make them like it again. For bass guitar, do you use compression? Do you use transient shaper like Transix on bass? I've definitely used transient design on bass. I think might be use compression too. Might use compression then a transient designer on the end if you want to get more poke. Yeah, there's no formula. Just whatever works. Is there a record or records you found most inspiring from a production standpoint lately? I always love records that, or I think that person has got a very particular sonic vision and they've just followed it without compromise, even if it sounds really strange to me. I loved Ulrich Schnauz's last record. That was about 2-3 years ago, where he took the idea of putting extremely long reverbs on things to like some whole new world, where it almost sounded like he'd got a sort of 8-second reverb on the master bus. And I just thought it was so bold. He didn't care that the vocals, you couldn't even make out one word of the vocals anymore. They were just this wash of sound. And I thought, oh, that's so brave. I loved it. And I love all this, you know, British underground music like Burial, which again has got a very clear sonic imprint. I think Burial has made us all think again about how we approach things. I admire your philosophy regarding being a musician rather than a mixer engineer. With that said, do you play any instruments? And if so, do you sometimes play on the projects that you're mixing? Yeah, I think I always play in some shape or form, even if it's into a virtual keyboard. You know, I'm really good with keyboards. That's my special skill. But I do enjoy picking up guitars because I think I approach them as a writer rather than as a performer. And I do have certain eccentric things I do with them in terms of positions, which means I probably come up with different chords to chords that a guitarist would necessarily come up with, and then maybe a really good guitarist like Chris might be put in the situation of having to do it properly. Yeah, so I think actually sometimes it's good to have instruments that you're brilliant at, and then instruments you're only moderately good at, because then the ones where your fingers haven't quite got the cliches under them, then you might stumble onto something original. What records do you enjoy referencing when mixing, even if they're your own? Yeah, I mean, actually, there's always things that it's worth listening to, and it's no one particular thing. It depends on what you're listening to. I remember when Andy Page and me were mixing a song called Tapes on Alanis Morissette's album, and I had this image of a certain kind of drummer playing in the verse, and I said he's like one of those indie drummers who looks like he's taking a lot of a certain drug, and he's really sort of slow and he's almost apathetic, but he's just holding it together, and then he turns into this monster in the chorus. And you know, trying to find examples of records where drummers kind of played like that, just to kind of think of it's like casting an actor for a movie or something. I think sometimes it's great to listen to records for that and imagine a kind of virtual band of who the players should be and what kind of their personality should be. Because in that particular song, you really wanted the drummer to feel like he was floaty and not overly excited, very laid back. And then in other songs, you might want him to seem like he's Animal from the Muppets, you know. to have a mobile rig so you can create outside the studio. Well, everyone's got laptops these days, and even in my studio, it's not unknown to have one person on a laptop in the vocal booth, one on the sofa, and one operating the big mission control. The danger of using your laptop is that you have to promise yourself faithfully that you'll turn the internet off. Otherwise, you'll just wind up surfing and Facebook, and you won't actually have made any music. You know, say I'm just researching something I did for a lyric, but in fact, you're not at all. Do you have anyone two mics that you always use for guitars? If so, do you use a set mic placement? No, I don't think I do really. I think you just get things that work for you and stick with them. Acoustic guitars, as I said, we did recently get a new mic. What's the new one we got? I really like it. I had a guy coming around and we did a kind of beauty contest, a kind of mic idol, set loads of them up and tried. I think we tried about 3 or 4. And this little guy we thought was really good.
C42.
Yeah, what's the name of the company who made it?
It's Josephson.
Josephson. Yeah, it's an American one. It sounds really nice on acoustics. But you know, it works for me. It might not work for you. Depends what kind of sound you like. Yeah, the guy sitting next to me is Mr. Christopher Elms. He's currently my engineer, and very good he is. The mix view. Yeah, we can show you the mix view. Why not? We don't
really
bother
use
look
it.
at the mix view much.
Oh.
Oh no. I
Hang
think
on.
Pro Tools might crash. Does happen sometimes, doesn't it? Even in the best professional circles.
Colours are your friend.
Yeah, colour things. Label tracks don't have loads of things called Audio 1. I was once mixing a track which a very careful and thoughtful Norwegian friend had sent me, and he even put his phone number on the track, so if anything went wrong you could phone him. I'd say anything, always give loads of information on tracks. Oh dear. Okay, it's just left the building. Could I play a bit of the mix to get more global with the Prime Plan project?
I can play bounce.
Yeah, play a balance, Chris, because we've just, Pro Tools has left the building for a moment. Normal service will be resumed. Turn it up, man.
I'm caught in the fire, and I don't know which way to turn. You call me a liar, but can't you see my heart is about to burn up? And you got the power, so please stop acting like you just wanna give up. Boy, your words are so tough. Why you acting like you got nothing to lose? We've seen it all, but how can we mend this if you don't wanna feel that all you owe me? Open up your heart and show me. I'll let you know exactly what love means. That you're not gonna leave me and stop acting like you got nothing to lose. Give you my heart, give it to you.
Guy, that actually sounded great on
So-
our end.